Okay, so it's a fairly big day today. We just got our first carbon fiber drive shaft in, and quite frankly it dropped right in as I hoped it would. Some of the great things about this is all a single piece, fully balanced unit. One of the best things you can do for your Alpha is to get the drive shaft balanced. You'd be surprised at how subtle vibrations you're picking up that you don't need to put up with that can exist in one of these cars. And when you have a balanced drive shaft, you notice it instantly. And so for us to have this single piece carbon fiber drive shaft is a great thing. If you notice, we no longer have the guibo. Again, the reason we don't need a guibo is because the carbon fiber itself will deflect about 20 degrees, which is ideal, and it's comparable to what a guibo would do. And now that we have this single piece unit and we only have the universal joint in the back, which is a horsepower stealing device, and you think about it, your original drive shaft has a couple of them, plus you have the center bearing, you have all these things that are robbing you of the horsepower that is going to the rear wheels. Now, for the big coup de grace. This unit weighs about 25% less than your steel unit. This unit is putting all that power back to the rear wheels that you are losing in the transition of an articulated drive shaft, the two-piece drive shaft in which you own. I've only developed these now for the GTV. We will possibly start developing them as well for the Spider and for the Super. For those of you who think that would be a direct bolt-on, no. They all have slightly different wheelbase to them, so therefore I couldn't use this on a Super because it would be about 4 or 5 inches too short. It's also not going to fit a Spider as well. So that's where we're at. This thing is in, it is balanced, it is beautiful. Now for those of you that have the 1750 or the 1600 motors, this is a great way of getting some of that horsepower that those motors desperately need to the rear wheels. So for you to have the horsepower and the torque added to the rear end of your car because of having this, it's something you will instantly recognize. You will see it, you will feel it. Now, what are we doing in the future? Now this one's going to be tested for a little bit in my car. And we will start to write the install program for it. And then we are going to produce several of them, and then they'll be available for sale. If you have ever had a drive shaft rebuilt and balanced, by the time you get it back and put it in your car, guess what you're spending? Close to $600, $700, $800. So if I'm able to get a carbon fiber drive shaft, which is going to give me horsepower back to my car, it's going to reduce the rotating mass significantly, and it's only a few dollars more, why wouldn't I? This is a big day. I'm very, very excited about this. I'm glad that it bolted right in with no drama. Here's a two-piece shaft system that came out of my car. Complete, this weighs about 22 pounds. The unit I just put in weighs about 15 pounds. The unit I put in is rated up to 450 horsepower. Those of you that often question whether you want to put a 2-liter motor in your early series cars, or you're going with massive horsepower and you're always concerned whether the 1600 drive shaft can handle it, well, this is a way to kind of not worry about it altogether, because now you have something that's far higher rated than what your car will ever be able to produce. You know, it's kind of strange. You spend all this time with the encouragement of others that have convinced us to do this, to get to the point where you're making parts that are outside the original concept of the car. Carbon fiber drive shaft makes so much sense in so many different ways. One, we're reducing our rotating mass by a substantial amount. Two, quite honestly, this is far, far safer than your two-piece articulated drive shaft you currently own. But when you think about it, the removal of that guibo for the sake of having all that torque flex in the actual carbon fiber instead is really quite ideal. To get rid of the center support bearing, to get rid of the universal joint here and the universal joint back there, you know, that's a great thing, because not only are we able to put that horsepower back to the rear wheels that is lost through the overcomplications of the two-piece drive shaft, but we're also, by all principles and accounts, driving something that is far, far safer.
I'm really excited about this. Now, the other math that you have to put into place when you do something like this is think about this. If your drive shaft needs to be rebuilt and balanced, universal joints, a pair of them, that's $100. Getting it balanced, that's a couple $100. By the time you change out the guivo and go through all the other rigmarole, the new bearing, getting it pressed on, and potentially painted, of course, you're going to be into that for several hundreds of dollars. So for me to be able to go to the point where we can get not only this produced, but to a level of affordability that makes you weigh the options of using your original one versus something like this, I think it's a win all the way around. And one of the things I need to do this morning is I need to remove the excess looseness out of my limit straps. Because now that I have this in place, though I have the capabilities for this to float up and down, I don't want this to ever have the potential of coming in contact with something. So I'm going to shorten my limit straps just to take the slack out of them. And that should theoretically be it. You have to torque these things down to a very specific weight. But other than that, this baby's going to be ready for the road. It was nice to have that almost completely easy enough to do bolt-in application. Yeah, you got to move the exhaust out of the way for a second. But essentially, other than that, everything's clearing. We've got all the clearance away from our emergency brake. We're not going to ever worry about coming in contact with the support plate here, because this thing would have to articulate way down here somewhere. But nonetheless, that's why I'm going to go ahead and shorten up the limit straps, just to make sure that nothing in the line of this is ever going to come in contact with the drive shaft. Alright, so we just did a test drive, the first test drive with the carbon fiber drive shaft in, and there's just numerous things that you don't even realize are going on with your car that don't exist anymore with this one now that has that drive shaft in it. By the fact that we don't have that floating bearing in the middle, you don't get that subtle bump that you always notice you have in your car. You don't get the bearing noise from that. You don't get the bearing noise from the universal joints. Everything has gotten much quieter on the drivetrain in this car simply because of this. You'll notice that the car is doesn't have nearly the vibration. This car doesn't have a whole lot of vibration, but it doesn't have the vibration that it used to have at all now. Now it's completely removed. There are just numerous little nuances it's hard to quantify that is now no longer on the car. It's these little characteristics that are amazing. But one of the things that is really something else is the shifting. When you're throttling in after a shift, you don't have any reverberation from it. It's just simple. It grabs the wheels and it goes. It is a very silky smooth experience. I was almost expecting some kind of bumping in the shifting mechanism simply because we don't have a guivo anymore. Well, that carbon fiber drive shaft is absorbing that energy and releasing it very fluidly. So it's a big win. Okay, so the rest of this weekend I'm going to be taking the car out and testing it thoroughly, but it appears by all purposes at this point that the carbon fiber drive shaft is working out great. We don't have any witness marks of any contact issues anywhere. We have certainly noticed how amazingly silky smooth it has been on the drive, and we've also noticed a tremendous amount of reduction in noise that comes from the center support bearing and the two universal joints that are on your primary drive shaft that you have now. So far, I cannot find a reason why this isn't a great idea. Maybe that's a little optimistic. Maybe by the end of the weekend I might have different ideas, but at this point, this has turned out to be a real winner. And go ahead and bring it up. Okay, so what's going on is we've had these Magnesium Campanellos here for quite a while. They belong to one of our good customers, and he has since now selling them on to yet another customer. And being the fact that these are magnesium, obviously before that deal goes through, we kind of want to make sure that they're safe. So what you're going to see happening is once we dismount all these tires off of them, Ariel's going to go into the phasing of dye checking them. Now, dye checking is a process of where you spray some of the application on, and then it seeps through any of the flaws in the magnesium. And you'll see what all that's about in a few minutes. But one thing's for certain, the magnesium wheels have gone up exponentially in value. And if you are in the market of buying them, and you do find somebody who has them, don't be so confident that they're safe. Have them dye checked. I would imagine there's plenty of places in your area that can handle that. We've actually had wheels shipped to us for dye checking, but it's not that complex of a process, but it's certainly something that every magnesium wheel should be tested for.
Alright, so here we are in the paint booth, and all the wheels have been properly cleaned with the supplied cleaner in the metal inspection kit. And what you're going to see us do next is apply our penetrating solvent. And what that is going to do is it's going to show us where all the little imperfections are in all of the wheels. That way we know whether they're good or not.